So really excited to have the one and only Mr. Brett Salakas here for this episode of Insights. It's been a bromance for a long time.
Long time.
So we've been friends online for a very long time. We first met IRL in 2016. I looked it up, mate.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that was a long time in Melbourne,
yeah.
and in Australia, not here in the UK. You might
Oh,
guess.
that's right. Actually, I haven't spoken yet. The accent hasn't come through. People don't know that I am from a different part of the world.
Yeah, a long flight, or flights coming here.
Yeah.
2 flights?
QF1, Qantas flight number 1. I thought it was a direct flight. Had a little stopover, a refuel in Singapore. Just a very quick 25-hour flight straight here.
Oh.
Direct, just a 25-hour direct flight.
Not too bad at all. Brett is someone who is influential, not just in Australia, but he's huge over there. But his impact with teaching, learning, and technology. There's a band, isn't there? Big in Japan. Is that a song? But no, his impact is and his legacy. Sounds like we're doing a eulogy now.
Yeah.
Is long-standing. Founder of Aussie Ed, the chat on Twitter, but impactful in so many ways. It's a real delight to have him in for a conversation here at Bett. We heard a little bit about your journey to the UK for Bett, Brett, but
not only first time in the UK, first time in Europe.
Is it really?
As someone I had my first principalship. I've lived abroad a very large portion of my life, about a quarter of my life. And as you know, like probably yourself, we get invited to sort of go around the world and speak at different conferences and whatnot. I tend to do, obviously, Australia and New Zealand. I tend to dart up to Asia and occasionally to North America. But literally the first time I've ever been in Europe. So I've been in the UK/Europe for about 30 hours.
Wow. How's the jet lag going?
Yeah, fantastic. It's currently about 2 a.m. in Sydney at the moment, so I think I'm doing all right.
That's very, very good indeed.
I do have a giant can of mother over there, just trying to keep me going.
Well, look, we talked about your journey to here and first time and welcome to the UK.
Thank you.
If nobody's welcomed you already, then
no, I take that as my official welcome.
There you go, brilliant stuff. But about your journey in education, Brett, can you share a little bit about? You mentioned principalships. You've been a teacher and a variety of roles within education. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, look, so I'm a primary school teacher by trade. So you guys call it primary here in the UK? Yeah. So primary school teacher by trade. 28 years in the classroom. Taught in Sydney, Australia for the early part of my career. Moved to Singapore. Teaching abroad was a really fantastic way to fast track into leadership. I guess we didn't have the teacher shortage that tends to be the case as today we have.
Yeah.
There was a lot of teachers back in those days, so climbing the ladder was a little bit hard. But going abroad, the thing was, I was on a 2-year contract. I actually taught at a British school. I taught at a British school in Singapore, but 2-year contract. So every year, 50% of the staff would leave and go home, predominantly home to the UK.
Yeah.
But I did have a very, very old, a relic from the British Empire. And she did used to refer to. She had a couple of Canadian teachers. There were a couple of Australian and a couple of Kiwis. And she did refer to us as teachers from the colonies. So we were the colonial teachers, but it was predominantly British teachers. But what was fantastic was, like I said, every 2 years. So if you ever stayed your 3rd year, the 4th year, the 5th year, you'd actually have opportunities for leadership pretty early in my career. Moved back home to Australia, taught again in schools for a while. My first principalship was in Singapore. Came back to Australia, did a range of different roles. Ended up moving out of schools and worked for the New South Wales Department of Education. and had some really cool roles there, doing different things. And kind of my team was responsible for the state's COVID response. So that was an interesting thing for a bit like yourself, someone who had invested a huge portion of my career into education technology and the reasoning behind teachers training and having good pedagogical practice, digital pedagogical practice. Suddenly, put your money where your mouth is type of time. It was like, all right, let's do this, and let's do this at scale. So the learning from home hub that we were able to create in New South Wales was quite significant and actually helped a lot of the other jurisdictions across Australia. So it was something that I'm quite proud of in my career.
Fantastic career from the sounds of it, and still continuing to make impact, not just say in Australia, but around the world. Because it's insights, Brett, I wanted to ask you some questions about something that I got back many years ago. I had the lovely opportunity to do a bit of a research project with the UK Department for Education. I got to visit Adelaide, and we were looking at sustainability in schools. Now, I learned from that trip that water is a scarce thing in Australia.
Yes, sir.
And I mean, I was really fortunate to visit like a place called like the Cowandilla Climate Change School. Way back in like 2006, I think it was.
So for those who don't know, Australia, the driest inhabited continent on Earth.
Wow. But take all that time back along, they were, recycling their water. They were growing their own plants for lunch. It was just phenomenal. I mean, we took what we learned, brought it back, and it fed into this sort of building schools for the future initiative here in the UK. So we sort of try to build in sustainability into the schools. Jump forward, 2024, climate change crisis is here, really, isn't it? Right? Yeah. So I wondered if you had any insights, because you work, across the whole of Australia and into New Zealand as well, like you said, and so driest continents in the world. When we use technology, it draws an awful lot of power. It takes water to cool that. All these different things are involved in that. Are there any sort of sustainability strategies that you've seen working about? Because we want to use technology, we want schools to work well, we want to be sort of future-proof, but in 5, 10, what's the world going to look like with the climate in 15, 20 years' time? Yeah. So are there any things that you've learned that Australia are doing really, really well around that might be of interest to our viewers?
Yeah, look, I'm going to put a little asterisk and disclaimer that my current role is the HP Hewlett Packard Education Ambassador for Australia and New Zealand. Now, funnily enough, I've got a device that's not hugely common in schools because it's a little bit high end, but I use a device called a Dragonfly, one of HP's products, Dragonfly. And when you talk sustainability, this particular product, and I had just disclaimer,
this was not planned.
This was not planned. You asked me a question about sustainability. My device is the most sustainable device in the world. So the Dragonfly device is actually made out of ocean-bound plastics. So they actually, if you've got a computer at home or you're listening on a device that's metallic, there's been a significant amount of mining that has had to happen to get that magnesium, to get that aluminium out of the ground. So our devices, just before we talk about any sort of sustainability from any other perspective, just the device that you're using to view this show probably has been mined. Probably in itself, the metals, but even the rechargeable battery, like your cobalt and all that sort of stuff, really, really challenging. If ever you haven't looked into it, go and look at cobalt mining and lithium mining, particularly the cobalt mining, and you might have a different view of chargeable batteries after that. So anything that we can do with our products to make our products more sustainable is all for the better. So my very high-end device is actually made out of ocean-bound plastics that they'll get. I don't know what they do. There's a big plant in Indonesia. They put them through some sort of process, and they actually hard press the keyboards, the casing, all that sort of stuff to give you your device. So supposedly the most sustainable device on the planet.
Wow. So what does it actually do then?
look, it's just a normal computer.
Oh, right, okay.
It's just a normal computer. It's a very powerful computer. But if you're a school and you want to model good sustainable practices, sometimes it's good to I guess lead by action, not just by word. But it's interesting with what you say, like there's all these sorts of trends, but we know, and I was going to say, we know that why do we do education? Like, why do we have education? And then we think, if you ask a teacher, and I remember asking my staff this once, just before COVID, when I was still like leading a school. I remember we kicked off our staff meeting, and I wrote up on the whiteboard in the at the staff meeting, and I wrote up, what is the purpose of school? And it's a good question to ask because you get a group of teachers, and you will have hundreds and hundreds of different answers off the top of your head. Purpose of school?
It's all about education, isn't it?
It's all about education. It's all about education. So then you refine the question and you talk about purpose. Well, someone has to pay for schools. Someone has to pay wages, pay infrastructure, pay for curriculum, pay for assessment, pay for a national thing. So this is our government. Our government uses our taxes. And why do governments prioritise billions of pounds? And I'm trying to make sure I say the word pounds and not dollars while I'm here. Millions and millions of pounds. Why does a government prioritise that sort of expenditure? Now, the reason is actually pretty simple from a government perspective. And it's to have that younger generation either be prepared for higher learning or prepared for the workforce. And I think everything that we do, and we're at the mecca of EdTech at the moment here at Bett in London, and you've got all these vendors everywhere, applying all of their wares. But really, I think every single person that can talk about anything that is of any sort of digital device or digital initiative or AI this or 3D print that, every person should be able to tie their product, their thinking, their idea, their concept back to that. How does that help what our actual purpose of schools are? And if people don't have a narrative around that, I think that is where they fall over. Now, I say that because when you talk sustainability, and we talk about the United Nations Sustainability Goals, and that's often where we go, we easily think sustainability, and you start with water, and we think environment and deforestation and desertification and all that sort of stuff. But education is one of the sustainability goals. When we talk about sustainability, educating our youth, preparing our youth, not just the ones right in front of us, but the youth around the world, that's one of the greatest things we can do from a sustainability point of view, because if we want our planet in good shape, we need the younger generations to have quality education.
Absolutely. I mean, great response. And say education is the cornerstone of so many things as well. I'm mindful that you're busy and probably tired of giving it 2 a.m. for you right now, but I wanted to spend a moment talking about your book.
Oh, okay, very good.
And have you got a copy of it with you by any chance?
I do. Yeah.
He'll go and get it. While he goes and gets a copy of his book, I'm just going to do a little bit of an intro to this book. So, a Mammoth Lesson.
A Mammoth Lesson. It's a big one.
It's a whopper. It starts off with a story, which sort of sets the scene, doesn't it, Brett?
Yeah.
But then from that,
a parable of sorts.
It then sort of dives into a framework which teachers can use to help them frame their thinking around their use of technology.
Yeah.
And it's a really useful book. And I say that as someone clearly who's obviously read it. Clearly, we haven't massively planned this conversation. I wasn't sure whether Brett was going to make it in time. He didn't even think he was going to arrive at the right time. So
we are
riffing a little bit here. But
no better way to do it.
Brett being Brett, he doesn't need much planning because he's got so many great insights to share. I want to dive into your book.
Yes, sir.
Not literally, because I wouldn't fit into it.
No.
But could you talk a little bit about your thinking about why you've created the book and then the framework that's in there? Could you talk around that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. And I've got another one coming out in a couple of months too, so it might even give you. You might even This can be what do you call that when it's the breaking news? No, it's not. The scoop.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to give you the scoop. Give you the scoop. This is a world first.
Yeah, could you talk around that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. And I've got another one coming out in a couple of months too, so I might even give you. You might even. This can be what do you call that when it's the breaking news? No, it's not. The scoop.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to give you the scoop. Give you the scoop. This is a world first.
World exclusive.
World first. I'll let you know because on Boxing Day I actually submitted my manuscript for the next book, so that'll be out in the coming months. So a Mammoth Lesson, very simple story. I'm as much as I love my technology, as much as I love all the razzle dazzle, and I am one for championing digital practice. I'm actually very old school at the same time. I really do value our traditional pedagogical methods, things that we know that work. My book, A Mammoth Lesson, actually starts, like you say, with that little metaphor at the beginning, that little narrative at the beginning, that is looking at an Ice Age tribe of people, or Ice Age family, actually called the Yogadep people. And the Yogadep people have their own little curriculum, and their curriculum is all based on hunting woolly mammoth, because woolly mammoth, very, very big, very, very difficult. If you're going to hunt them, you've got to learn how to do it. And you don't go out and do it by yourself. You need to collaborate with a whole bunch of people, all that sort of stuff. So they have a very simple curriculum called SPEARS, and SPEARS. Each one of those words is an acronym for a different set of thinking and practices, all to do with hunting the woolly mammoth. And in the story, the family group go out, they hunt the mammoth, they catch the mammoth, they apply their lessons. The older hunters have taught the younger hunters what to do, and they do that very, very successfully. What they don't realise is they have caught the last mammoth anywhere. And so they don't notice at first, but suddenly the world begins to change. They're going out hunting, they're using these traditions, they're using the lessons that they've been taught, and there's no mammoth to catch. But you know what? Still got to eat. Don't eat, you die. So suddenly all these young hunters are going out and they're having to try and catch different sorts of prey, and obviously they need different techniques and different tools to be able to catch different animals. And this creates friction within this little family group, because the older hunters can't understand, well, we had no trouble catching mammoth in my day, maybe we need to increase our lessons and try harder, all this sort of stuff. So it creates this friction, and obviously it's a metaphor for a whole bunch of the challenges that we have with our traditional curriculum. Yet, coming back to what we said at the very beginning, what the purpose of education is to prepare students for workforce. If that's what we're trying to do, and if that's the whole point, we spend millions and millions of pounds, maybe we need to make sure that those things are a little bit aligned. So they are in the Yogadep group in the same sort of challenge that we're in now, but they find a pathway forward. What they start to realise is, whilst the old lessons and the new tools might be different, the underpinning techniques of how to hunt effectively are still the same. So they might adapt their prey, they've adapted their tools, but they merge with the traditional lessons, and they see what is value in the tradition, the new methodologies, and bring those two together. And I think that's the impasse that we're in. We need to be able to have an understanding of not what is the content or what is the tool that we used to teach with, but what is it about the way we used to teach and have taught successfully for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years. What is our understanding of traditional pedagogical practices, and how do we merge that effectively with digital technologies that can enhance, not take away from that? So there's a lesson in there for us. And of course, the Easter egg there is the Yogadep people. Yogadep backwards is pedagogy. And then the book goes on to unpack the SPEARS acronym, and then look at how schools and how systems can apply the SPEARS into their digital practice within the school environment. That's the book.
So, you want to get yourself a copy? Sorry, there's no competition. Although, maybe there might be if you get in touch with Brett. You can follow Brett on social media at Mr. Salakas. He's available on all formats as well. Please do reach out.
LinkedIn is the one that I tend to lean into a little bit more.
Yeah,
Although I sent my first TikTok today.
Did you
So
really?
I did. So I've taken the plunge into TikTok.
He'll be on Snapchat next. So listen, thank you so much for taking the time to join me for this conversation on Insights, Brett. Please do connect with him. Before we dash off, please do give us a little the inside scoop on your new book. What's it called?
A eulogy for the essay. Authentic assessment in the age of AI. So again, I guess you can probably, from what I just explained about my book, the Mammoth book, I am very big on traditional knowledge and traditional understandings and the value of traditional practice, and how do we keep that authenticity in a world that is sort of rapidly changing.
One of the things, I mean, I've engaged with Brett in so many different ways over the years, but I'll reflect upon one that happened quite recently. He was a judge in the Global EdTech Awards. Brett always brings the traditional side of things through to everything he does. Whenever I've sort of seen him speak at events or engage in things, he's got a really good sense of connection with. Do you want to sort of share a little bit about what happened with the choice?
Yeah. Look,
it's so important. It's so important to sort of show respect, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, you're right. Actually, I haven't actually looked at it from that perspective. It's funny that you say it that way, but it is very much about me and about respect. Yeah, it actually does.
The sort of leader you are and how you work with people and all those things, which shines through in the book as well, right?
Oh, thank you.
So it's really, really good. So can you talk just to wrap up?
Yeah. So in Australia, we have a tradition whenever we gather that we pay respects to the traditional owners of the land, our First Nations people, which obviously in Australia is our Aboriginal people. So we have a thing called an acknowledgement of country, in which we acknowledge our First Nations brothers and sisters as the first educators, the first teachers of the land on which we work and walk. But obviously around the world, every nation has its traditional people. So it sort of cuts to exactly what we've been talking about. Having respect for tradition and then making sure you uphold the traditional values and respect that tradition, and you find a way to meld that with the new. You don't get stuck in just tradition and you shun the new, and you don't embrace the new and forget your traditions, but making sure you respectfully find balance between that. That's very much at the core of what I do, what my book's about, my work, and obviously, that acknowledgement of country that we bring at the start of any meeting when we gather in Australia.
Thanks for sharing that, Brett. The reason why I wanted to, I think it goes to sort of showcase his approaches, but I think there's an awful lot we can learn, Brett, from those approaches, because, there's very little sort of reinventing of the wheel in life, I find.
True.
And we certainly find ourselves, certainly myself at least, always standing on the shoulders of giants.
Very true.
Right? There are always people who will have gone before, and we can build and learn from them and build upon that, and showing respect to them, I think is so important, and that shines through in what you do and what you share and all those different things. So
I will say too,
bring that.
I've had my 30 hours of UK life so far, and so I treated myself to a day of touristing, and I downloaded a couple of different self-guided walking tour apps, and we talk about paying respects to history, walking around your beautiful town here in London, and just feeling the history. And you talk about standing on the steps of China, the insane wealth of history and experience, and how much the UK has shaped the entire world. I mean, here I am from the other side of the world speaking English. It's a big thing in itself when you think about it, right?
Yeah.
It's funny that you finished with that, and I just say thank you to you. You welcomed me, and now you welcomed me at the start of this episode. How about we finish by me saying thank you to you and thank you to your beautiful country, because I just have been immersed in the wonderful, rich tapestry that is your history so far.
Oh, it's lovely to hear. Thank you so much, Brett. And thank you to you too.
Yay.
Cheers, buddy. Thank you to you too for joining us on this episode of Insights. Please do make sure you follow us on social media at NetSupport Group. Please do go to the youtube.com/NetSupport YouTube channel and hit that subscribe button. And do it right now so you don't miss out any more episodes of Insights live from Bett 2024. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.